Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Martha Perez. I am with the CASAS Technology Support Team, and we're going to talk about an overview of TOPSpro Enterprise. I have my colleagues with me, Luke Philly and Tyler Fu. You guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah.
Sorry. Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Fu and I work in CASAS tech support alongside my colleagues here today, Martha and Luke. If you have ever called in CASAS tech support, chances are that you spoke to at least one of us already. In any case, I'm happy to have you all here joining us today for this training. Thank you.
I'm Luke with CASAS tech support as well. Same thing as Tyler and Martha. I'm the newest one, so I'm the newbie, I guess, but been working with the program for a while, so I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much, guys. Excellent. Okay, folks, well, documentation for our training today, you can find it under training and support. And then once you get to the training and support webpage, there are links on the left-hand side of the screen. You're going to find them under TOPSpro Enterprise Help. And here you can see the TOPSpro Enterprise Basics training. This document is going to be very helpful to understand all the steps that we're going to go through today in our explanation. So I'm going to go ahead and send you a link in the chat pod as well, so you can download it on your free time. All right, so looking towards this training. All right, so we have also under the training and support, the TOPSpro Enterprise software, we have some system requirements that we also need to have in mind when opening TOPSpro Enterprise or recommending somebody to go into TOPSpro Enterprise. So we can click here on software and then TOPSpro Enterprise and system requirements, because it is important that they should know whenever you want to recommend somebody to go to TOPSpro Enterprise, even for the Rolling Hills database, to know that they need to have a Windows 10 computer. It does not work with Chromebooks, or it does not work with MacBooks. With Macs, any who has a Macintosh machine, it does not work because it is not compatible. So TOPSpro Enterprise, it is just compatible with Windows 10 and 11 as I am. Let me see if I can make this a little bit larger. Here are the system requirements, Windows 10 and 11. Those are the approved operating systems and compatible with TOPSpro Enterprise. Again, I put a link in the chat pod so you can have that. And then we also have our, let me make this a little bit smaller. We also have from our homepage, we have the online training link. When you click on this online training, it takes you to the online training website. The most important thing here to do is make sure that you are logged in on the top right-hand corner so you can start joining some of these trainings. And we have a very recommended training for any data manager in TOPSpro Enterprise to take, which is the module 4. That is our recommendation. But besides the module 4, which is under CASAS Instructional Implementation and Resources, we also have another training, which you can find under, where is it here? The TOPSpro Enterprise training. So this introduction to TOPSpro Enterprise is also very helpful to continue learning about TOPSpro Enterprise. Okay, so I'm also going to try to send a link through the chat pod so you can guys have that as well. And at your own convenience, go ahead and enroll in that training. This is a self-paced training module, so you don't really need to schedule any time for that, but you can do it on your free time. Okay, I'm going to put a chat pod in the chat pod. I'll put a link for that, and that will also enhance your knowledge about TOPSpro. All right, folks. Well, with that said, we're going to start into TOPSpro Enterprise, and for that, you can download it from this website, etasonline.org. Once you type that in, I'll also put a link on the chat pod. Once you go to the website, it will automatically take the HTML5 in there, and then you just need to click on Install TE Client. When you install the TE client or click on that button, it's gonna ask you to download this file. It is a piece of software that gets installed into your computer, so it does grab a little bit of memory. So you just wanna make sure you click on the link to download the freshest copy of TOPSpro Enterprise. And it looks just like this. So you just need to select the server where you are located. If you are in California, you want to choose California. And of course, your data manager should already provide you with your credentials, or if you're the data manager, you probably already received them from CASAS. So in this case, as you can see, we have several servers. Right now, I'm going to be using the Rolling Hills simulation server because that is the one that we have assigned for practicing. So it is a pre-populated database where it has all kinds of fictional data that you can use. You're always welcome to come in here and log in. If somebody, Luke or Ty, can send us a link for the Rolling Hills simulation server, that would be great in the chat pod. All right, so right now I'm just using admin, all lowercase, for a user account, administrator, any number from 1 through 60, I believe. We already have 60 accounts at RHAS. Thank you, Tyler, so that you can see the link in the chat pod. So you can know what login credentials to use in order to log into the Rolling Hills simulation server. I'll go ahead and click connect. And this is what you're gonna be looking at once you log in for the first time into TOPSpro Enterprise. It might ask us to accept, right now it's not asking me to accept the end user license agreement, but sometimes they will for the people who are new, or when you log into the Rolling Hills simulation server for the first time, it will ask you to acknowledge the end user license agreement. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is the start page, which has many links here with useful information. It has this how to, and whenever you see this little pin button, you can unpin it to expand that. That is just hiding here in the left corner, but you can also hover the mouse and pin it back again if you like. We have shortcuts. We have listers for your recent reports if you have generated some recently. So this start page, it could look a little bit overwhelming because it has like too many links, but it is really helpful when you really look into it, and it'll recall really quick on your recent reports, or on if you want to shortcuts and stuff like that. And it also alerts and notifications and any CASAS news or announcements that you want to do at your own agency, you can do that as well. Okay, for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the start page, and we're going to see that this is a blank slate. This is a clean slate for TOPSpro Enterprise. We don't have anything open yet, but we're going to start with our first link, or with our first TE icon here. If you click on this icon and you see there's this is the menu, the main menu on your top left corner. All these view, organization, records, reports, tools, and help, they are all open in the Rolling Hills database. So you can see what an administrator has access to. And this is about an enhanced administrator. So there's two different levels of access for TOPSpro Enterprise. There's the basic access and the enhanced access. So it really depends much on the type of web test units that you purchase, or TE units. So that varies, and we're just going to explain the basic functions in here. So in TE, in the TE icon on your top left corner, something that you can do if you don't know what's your agent, or if you don't remember what's your agency ID, if you happen to be in a call with CASAS Tax Support or somebody, and you want to know, you just want to hover your mouse. Just hover your mouse in the TE icon on your top left corner, and then you'll be able to see or read through that you are using your agency ID is right there listed, as well as your username. Okay, so this is a helpful tip for when you don't know exactly or recall at the moment what's your agency ID. So once I click on this TE icon, you see that you have other functions to either lock the computer if you use a public computer that other people also log into. You can lock your TOPSpro Enterprise or disconnect. You can change your password as well or associate another account, but you also have other options. When you click on options, you'll see this other options box that has several tabs in here that you can also, I would just recommend like leaving it to the default. But like for instance, in general, in the general tab, you have 999 minutes. I have 999 minutes. By default, you have about 30, I believe. And that's when you have an inactivity period of not using your computer for 30 minutes, TE will automatically lock the computer. If you want to expand that, if you're the only person who uses it, like myself, I expanded to 999 minutes because I'm always in TOPSpro Enterprise. But if that's not your case and you're using a public computer that other people also have access to, then you can, leave it to the defaults as well. So there's also an OnStart tab here that has this warning by default. I don't know if you have received that warning if you use eTest Online, that once you log into eTest, it gives you a warning. Hey, you have less than 500 units, but you probably don't really need those many units. You can also reduce that warning down to a 50 if you'd like. That's the minimum amount of WTUs that you can have in the warning. So that's something else that probably you might find useful. And I'm not going to go through all of these tabs, but I would just recommend that other than these two, just leave the rest to the defaults. And if you have like any questions about them, you can definitely feel free to call us. All right. So I'll just click OK right now to exit. I'm going to click on the view button that you can use that to make the view larger. You have the normal by default, you have medium, and you also have large, so that will enhance the view on your screen. We have the dashboard and the start page, where you can bring back again. Okay. Again, I'm going to close it so I can continue showing all these menus. You have organization menus, which includes information about your agency's records. So anything pertaining to your agency, such as staff, personnel, users, sites, classes, test administrations, any type of records pertaining to your own agency, this will be under the organization menu. Now, under the records menu, you're going to find information pertaining to your students, like their class enrollments information, their demographic information. And as you can see, once I click on one of the sub-menus from the main menu, which is records, I click on students. If it has this little gray arrow towards the right, it will point you to unfold some more sub-menus from that. So anything pertaining to the students' records, it's under the records menu, or your students' information and their test record as well. Now, reports is exactly just about that, about reports. And again, reports, when you keep clicking on one of the sub-menus, and sometimes it has even other options like this test results, it has a skills profile, and it unfolds to some more information or some more sub menus to generate reports on. And of course, you can generate all types of reports that you have enabled in your own local agency's admin or login. And then we have the tools menu, which has many tools of importing data into TOPSpro Enterprise or doing other activities in TOPSpro as well. And then we have the help menu, which has the release notes and the end user license agreement I talked about at the beginning, and some contents about the help menu. All right, folks. Well, this would be our navigation through our menu on the top left. And we also have you identify some kinds of reports. Maybe some of you get asked to generate a report really quick for a student, perhaps. And that way, here you can learn how to do it. When you go to reports, you can click on test results, and click on skills profile, and then click on individual skills profile. This is the one that I'm going to generate. I love this report because it really gives you a lot of information, or it gives the teacher a lot of information to know from their student and how well they did. All right, so this can be a little bit overwhelming as well. I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the view button and do a medium, perhaps a medium, so I can have a better size screen here. And again, this navigator, folks, it opens up when you open up any type of report. It has this little navigator on the left, which means that you can go into more options. So you can pin it or unpin it as well. Well, it's pinned by default, but you can unpin it and to have a better view of your screen. But this right now, it could be a little bit overwhelming. Just to let you know, guys, don't get intimidated by this. We can definitely collapse all these elements so it doesn't seem like a lot of information, and we can just go start by each of the sections so we can understand it really, really well, and it won't be intimidating anymore. So session name by default, it already has the name of the report, which is the individual skills profile. It always includes the date, the time, and the administrator or the user who is logged in at the moment. You are always welcome to enter any session comments if you'd like, but that's not necessary. I mean, you don't really have to do that. Once you click on this common filter, it will expand this next section, which by default give you the current program year. This contains the current program year and then which programs are required to have an enrollment into. So any students who have enrollments in basic skills, ESL, and high school diploma and HSE, they will appear on the report. If a student does not have an enrollment into any of these 4 programs, they won't be able to show up in this particular report. I'm not saying that all of the reports need to have, people need to have an enrollment, but in this particular report, the individual skills profile, you definitely need to have an enrollment for these students. And then you can also make a notes here for class status, like NA, like active or completed or inactive. And then we also have another section, the date ranges. You can do somebody who has like the activity date between March 1st and March 31st, or if their assessment date is between that time, then you can definitely apply that if you need to only search for a bulk set of students. There's also another section called output layout parameters. These layout parameters are set by default. I would really advise for the time being, not make any changes to it right now. But something I definitely recommend to do is to click on this show grade level equivalent. That is a really cool thing to have in the report. And I'm going to scroll towards the right so you can see that there's other criteria here included, like warn if too many pages. Again, these settings are set by default. If you want to see the report in the student name format is listed by first and then last name, but you can also do last and first or first, middle, last, whichever you prefer, you can do that. All right. So we can leave those as is for now. And then I'm going to scroll down to the last option, which is the special options. I'm going to expand this option now and see that we have other analysis here or other selections to make if you'd like. Show only students with GED predictor if you want, or HiSET predictor, but the predictor by default is GED and HiSET. So this is something cool to also have in the report. Again, I'm going to pin the navigator now. And what I'm going to show you here in this navigator is how to select specific demographic students, like specific students if you only want to show it, or if you want to generate this report for specific students. So for that, you can generate it by class. If you have classes in your agency, I would go to class instances for that if you want to generate it for a specific class. But if you don't, and you want to just generate it for specific students, I would go to student in program years. When you go to that section, it will get you a list of all the students who have activity in the current program year or who have tests. So what you can alphabetize this lister by clicking on these little buttons that look like a little diamond, but it's really two triangles or two arrows, one pointing up, one pointing down. This will alphabetize your list from A through Z, or if you invert that, it will alphabetize it from Z to A. So we want to keep it to the A to Z. And as you can see, this little general check mark here on the left corner, top left, I will uncheck that and just pick and choose, any students that you would like to generate for. That is how you make the multiple selections or manual selections for individual students. Right now I have a handful of students, and you can see the amount of records here. There's 648. So once you do your selections, I'll go ahead and say generate right now, so you can see what that report looks like. And this is going to generate in another page or in another window. We will open another tab. This works pretty similar to an Excel spreadsheet, if you can compare it to that. So once the report generates, it'll give us all the results from the student's latest assessment. It'll have the name of the report on the top. It has the name of the student, their ID number, the name of the school, and then the program that the student is enrolled into. And it'll give you the most recent assessments with their date, their form number, their score, the NRS level they're at, their folder number, number of items they attempted, how many they attempted, how many there are in total in the assessment, and how many they got correct. And also the grade level equivalency. And of course, the below section shows the skills that the students have regarding those assessments. And then it'll also have this GED subsection if they are in that area where they probably get the math goals and the reading goals. We have different assessments and different assessment types and levels. Again, this navigator on your left, you can unpin this if you'd like, so you can have a better view. You can fit page if you like. You can do 2 pages for other reports to see other people in the report. But by doing fit with, you can also navigate to the next student, and that way look throughout your entire list of students that you generated for. You have the thumbnails as well that you can enable in the reports. So this is also a cool feature. And again, fit with, and you can export this report into a PDF Adobe by default. But you can also do an Excel spreadsheet. You can also do an Excel workbook. All right. So any questions so far from what I have shown you? You're welcome to open your microphone, and you're also welcome to type in the chat pod if you like. We have Luke and Tyler monitoring the chat pod. But if there's no major questions so far, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to launch a poll that we have prepared. All right, so this is our poll right now. All right, you ready? Here we go. I just launched a poll, and it has a question. Which operating system is compatible with TOPSpro Enterprise? So go ahead and type in your answers, folks, and we're going to see all the results. We're just going to give it a minute for you to respond. If you can recall from the beginning of our training, what was the operating system compatible with TOPSpro Enterprise, feel free to enter it. Okay, it looks like we already have 4 responses from our participants today. We have a little bit more than four people, so feel free to enter. Oh, perfect. We got another 5. We got another response. Excellent. We have 6. Everybody is participating. Great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. Can you see the results on your screen? Yay, everybody did awesome. You already know that Windows 10 or above is the required software to install TOPSpro Enterprise. It cannot be installed in Mac computers or in Chromebooks. So great job. Great job. With all that said, I'm going to pass around now the microphone to my coworker, Tyler. Thank you.
All right. How's everyone doing? Thank you for that, Martha.
You're welcome.
So I'm just getting a little situated here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to start with, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Okay. 1 second here. Okay. So I wanted to start my section off on discussing listers in TE. So what exactly are listers? So listers are what it sounds like. So it lists out records or any data, and you have it by categories. You have it by searchable columns in TE, and I can explain it in a way that, you know, in practical terms, it looks exactly like an Excel sheet. If you look at it, if you have a first impression of it, but there are multiple listers in TE. But in this training, I'm going to use the students demographics lister because that's probably something that all the users will probably use maybe like 70% of the time on your journey in using TE. So I'll go ahead and get started with that. I will be using the administrator account just like Martha did. Keep in mind that there are many access groups in TE, and each access group has their own access rights. So make sure you are using the correct access group. So for administrator, it's similar to a data manager. A data manager has the highest access rights in TE. And then below that would be like a TE admin access group. And then other access groups would be like teacher access group or like a proctor or coordinator access group. All of those are available to use on this Rolling Hills. So I recommend going into each of those and just kind of getting a feel for what access rights we have available. So in order to get to the students' demographics, it would be under records. And remember, records is for students and organization is for agency. So records is any data that pertains to students, you'll find under records. Any of these categories here, we will have listers for also. So in this situation, I want to use the demographics lister. Again, that's records, students, and then demographics. Records, students, demographics. So once I open that up, we have our lister available. And right off the bat, it's going to show us, and it looks like a Excel spreadsheet here. It has columns and it has rows. So these columns, you can search up whatever that column is specifying for, and we'll do some exercises later on to kind of get a feel for that. But right off the bat, we have a new button right here. This means that you're going to create a new student, and I'll walk you through that later on. For enroll, we have the enrollment into a program year. So let's say you have your student existing in the program already. You can bring that student into the program year, or we can enroll them into a site. In this situation, we have only one site, which is North Campus. So in TE, students are placed at the agency level, and you have to spread them out at sites. Meaning every time you create a student they get placed at the agency, and whatever you do with that student, as far as placing them into a class enrollment or have them take a test, they will be automatically placed at a site enrollment. And so let's say a teacher is at a particular site, but not at the agency. They can only see students at that site if they are enrolled at that site. So if a teacher is not at the agency, they can't see the student. Okay, we want to keep that in mind. It's going to make sense more as I explain it and as we go further into the training. But just keep in mind that students are at the agency level, which in this situation is the Rolling Hills 4908. This is the container level access. If you click on that, we have the drop down, and we only have one site for this Rolling Hills agency, which is North Campus. And if I click on this, we're going to have all our students at this site also, but I'll leave it at the agency level for this training. Moving forward, we have a filter button here. So what this does is, and this is supposed to be actually defaulted to in program year. So every time you actually click on the filter, I did some changes earlier, so it didn't default to that. So if you click on this, it should be at current program year. The programmers want it to be defaulted this way because if you don't have the filter for this year, you're going to have a ton of students that you may not need for, let's say, for last year or for 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Any data that ever existed for TE for your school will show up if we don't have this filter on, which brings me to my next point. So once you create a student, they will not necessarily be on this list. That's because of this filter. By default, this is on, but it's showing for any program any program year activity for this year, 21-22. But if you just simply created a student that doesn't have any program year records, they're not going to show up on this list because of this filter. We get calls on this a lot because a customer just creates a student, but they don't show up on this list, and that's because of this filter right here. It's blocking those students that doesn't have any activity, such as like taking a test this year or class enrollment this year, or even being in the current program year. So anything of that matter will place them will be shown on this list. Okay. So by default we have this, but so let's say we want to see students who have existed maybe 5 years ago, however long the school has been using TE for. If we want to see those students, we have to exit out of the filter. So we can click on this red X, and now we don't have any filter in place. We can actually change this filter to all if we wanted to also. And this shows like a description of what filter we want so that it's pre-selected already. So it does all the work for you. But if we want to see all our students from way back then, we can do all and then click OK. Actually, let me go back for a second. I wanted to show you how many students are available. So we have 803 students in this current program year. So again, these students have activity in this current program year. If I take that filter away, I have about 7,000 students. So these are all the students who have ever existed in TE, okay? Regardless if they have any activity, if a user just simply created their profile, they're gonna show up on this list. All right. So moving on, we have columns here. And I want to give you guys a view before we go into columns. We have about 7 columns here. These are not set in stone. You can always take out columns. You can always add columns. By clicking on this, we have all the options available to us. On the left side, on this side here, we can see what's available to us in live lister mode here. And if we have columns, we can add whatever we want on the right side. As you can see, there's a ton of options available to us. So let's say if we want to add city, we highlight that and then click on add, and then email, we want to have that show up. And now we have on the left side, we have all available columns here. If we close that out, as you can see, we have city and email added there. And just to show you an extreme example here, if I wanted to add all of the columns on the right side, you can actually do so. So you can click on add all, and then now we have all those options available to us. We can even take them away if you want just a blank. I mean, it's not really useful, but this is what happens if you remove all of them. So columns is a way to add all your information. Again, it does go by column, and in the field, we'll see how we can search up by columns, all right? And if we want to go back to the default lister, we can always close everything out and go to records, students, and then demographics. We have our defaults again. There it is. So next button I want to show you guys is the sort. So this shows what's activated for sorting out your columns. So we click on this button, we have student ID sorted already, and it works like the column button. You can take what's on the right side, put it on the left side, and have what's sorted out. So for example, if we have student ID sorted and it's pointing up, which means I believe it's in ascending order. So if you scroll down, it's the student ID number is going up in numerical order. If you want to add another sort, you can do so. So let's say for full name, you can add it to the left side. So notice there we have 1 and then 2 sorts. This means it's in priority. So student ID is sorted as a first priority. From there, it's name takes second priority, whatever is being sorted for student ID. And then the next sort would be name. And if we want to add birth date, we can do so. So there's 3 sorts now. So first is student ID, and then next is name, and then third is birth date, okay? So if you want like a pretty detailed sort option, you can do that. But it's always typically student ID where it's sorted out. So now I want to go over, we have these options up here for the lister as a whole, but we also have the option to change the columns. So these are, again, they're not set in stone. You can always edit them. So if I hover over where I want to add a new column, let's say name, I can right click and then add in, let's say, break this down into first name. And then I can add another column that says last name. So now I have 2 new columns with first name and last name broken apart from this original full name column. And if I don't want to use that anymore, I can just hover over it and then just right click. And then if I scroll all the way to the top, I can click on hide full name. And so now I have my new columns, and then I've taken away a column. And you can actually move this around too, to your liking. So again, it's not set in stone. However you want to set this up to your style and how you want it to look, you can do so. So another tool for columns, I'm gonna take all these away and show you the second way in setting the sort options here. So we have our sort right here. If you want to just use the columns to sort, you can actually hold down Control on your keyboard and then click on first name. Notice there again, we have our first and second sort. we want to do a third sort, we can. Hold down Control, click on that sort arrow, and we can add even some more if we wanted to. So birth date, and then maybe gender. So that's 5 sorts going on there. Again, this goes by priorities. It sorts by student ID and down the columns right here. So birth date and then gender is last, okay? All right, so let's say we like what we have here. Everything's good. It's like you're going into your car, you have your preset, you know, your seat adjustments, your steering wheel, everything's good to go, you know? So you want this to always pop up once you jump into your car, you know, your Lamborghini, your Ferrari, whatever. You want it to be pre-selected for you. So how do we save this to our, so that it always pops up every time we open up TE? Well, we can go to the More button. Keep in mind this More button, it varies between different computers. So let's say if a computer is like a 23-inch screen, you're gonna have a More option that's different than what I have here. So sometimes when we talk to our customers, you know, we might say what's under the More, but it's different than what we see. So keep that in mind. It all depends on the screen size. But if we click on More here, we have what's called a schema. So a schema, you can think of it as like your preference. You know, again, whatever pre-selected adjustments you have in your car, your Ferrari, your Lamborghini, your Maserati, you jump in there, you know, you have all that settings for you. You can save it. You can name it also. So let's say schema name, I'll change it to testing. All right, so go ahead and save this. And now it's saved right there. If we exit out, we can always go back to that schema and we have it all presented to us easily and efficiently. But we can always go back to the default. Default's always set. And there it is if we ever wanted to go back. But we'll keep this as our schema here. And yeah, so if you like what you have here and you always want that as your option, I recommend using the schema. It saves a lot of time. And you know, if however you want to adjust your lister so that you can get the most out of your data, you can do so with the schema. Okay. All right. So another option I want to show with the columns are filters. You could do searches with these filters. Again, this filter is for your lister as a whole, but this filter right here for columns, you can find specific data that you have. If you click on that and then it has starts with, if you know, let's say a student ID that starts with 001, 23, for example, and you don't know the rest, but you can do that and find all data that has 00123 and that starts with that. Or you can do if it's ends with, I don't think there's any results with this. Yeah, so there's no results, but let's say, you know, you have 123, ends with 123. If you notice there, it ends with 123. That's what it means. It ends with that, whatever search you're using there. I like to use contains because sometimes I just hear my customer and they mention, you know, some parts of what I just heard, and there's a lot going on, you know, when I'm working with TE. So I use contains, and then it just brings up the search results for whatever I need there. So it's in the middle or in the beginning or at the end, wherever it is, you have your student ID with 123. And let's say if you want to find first name within 123, you can also use first name, and it works the same way. Starts with, ends with, contains. I'll use contains, and let's say the student's name is Jack. We'll go in there, and then there it is. So we have 2 search fields going on there. So moving on, I want to talk about merge. Let's say a student has two profiles, and this happens a lot, where a student maybe went into eTest, accidentally created a student ID, a new student ID, but they already exist in the TE database. Or let's say, the user accidentally imported another student ID, but they exist already. Things like this happen all the time. So we use a merge to, as it sounds, we combine the two profiles together and we have one. And in order to do that, we'll go to records, students, demographics. It only works in this lister, okay? Keep in mind, it only works in this lister. So I like to use my default actually. So I have my default schema. Let's just find some really common name here. So I'll start with John. There's a lot of John in this database here. So let's say John Paul right here. So these two students, hypothetically, they are the same students, but they have two different IDs, okay? So we want to merge these two students and we want to highlight both of them and then click on the more. And that should appear right there, okay? You can't do merge with one. It doesn't really make sense. You can't do three. You can only do two, okay? So it has to be two students' profiles before you can do a merge. So once that happens, we'll do merge. And we have our merge reconciliation page here. So the red boxes means that you have to fix the discrepancy, which is the correct data that you want to appear for this final record for the student. There's a ton here, and if you want, you can just go one by one in these red boxes. Or if you know that record 1 is correct or record 2 is correct, you can choose one or the other. It's going to automatically select that. So let's say if I want record 1, and then from there I'll do mark all fields solved. It's going to take away all that red boxes. Look at that. So now we are good to go. We're going to apply the merge. Okay, so that's what we want. It's a successful merge. We'll click OK. So now we only have hopefully just one John Paul. Wait, so there was 3 John Pauls. So the other one went away already. So we have this John Paul here. So this is a merged profile here now. Okay, and that's the merge. You click to profiles, you go through all the reconciliation, the red boxes, and you're good to go. All right. So I want to go over batch edit. Batch edit means, let's say you have a lot of students that you need to change their profile for, that they have like some common information that can be changed quickly and easily. So you don't have to go one by one and edit them. Let's say these 3 John Paul students right here. You can do more if you want, but I'll start with 3 for now. Let's say they have the same phone number. Let's see. We'll go to more, and then we'll batch edit. Let me find a good example for this. So, okay, so all John Paul had highest year of school, let's say 12, okay? We want to edit that. We know that that's the common record for all these 3 students. We'll go ahead and batch edit, and then we'll put highest year of school 12. Okay, so that's the concept of batch editing. You have more options here if you want, but for the purpose of this training, I'll keep it pretty simple. From here, I'll just click save. It is gonna, for batch editing or batch inserting, it is gonna ask for second user credentials. Keep that in mind, because it is something that you're changing multiple students for. So we want, TE was programmed to have multiple gateways or securities before you can actually make these. huge changes. So it's going to ask anything that includes batch editing or batch inserting, you're going to need a second user credential. Okay. So that's batch editing. I want to go over batch inserting. Same concept. So if we choose 3 students, I'll keep this example for John Paul still. So we'll go to more and then batch insert. Let's say all these students are in the same class. You don't want to add classes to them because one by one, because it just takes way too long. We can do student in class. And then here you can do, you can find that class that they're all in. And then you can add that program year. It's this current program year. You can even change the date also to match up when the class started. And then you click OK. I believe it's gonna, let's see here. Like the start for a date. So the dates don't match. Start for the date. Oh, here we go. Oh, so this one doesn't ask for a second authorization. So batch inserting doesn't ask for that. Only batch editing and batch deletion. Okay. So you learn something new every day. So that's batch inserting. Demographics example. I'm going to go ahead and create a student now. So we'll start from scratch and we'll go to new. This is just like a clean slate to create a student. So student ID, I'll go ahead and do 1, 2, 3. You know, we'll do Thai student. The minimum requirement is student ID and first name and last name. And I believe that's it. I'll go ahead and save it now. Oh, gender, okay. We'll go ahead and select male. Okay, so now I just created a student. So on the left side, if you notice, all those navigator child listers just popped up. And that's because we just have a parent record established. Now we have to set up our child listers. Well, we don't have to, but those are easy ways to access these child listers is through the navigator. Okay, so we have, let's say in program years, as I mentioned earlier, that's how one way you can put them on this list. But I like to go to this list here again and show you that idea that I was telling you about in current program year. So I'll go back and let you see what's happening behind the scenes here. So we have 805 students in program year. So if I try and find this Thai student, I can't find that student, 1, 2, 3. Even if I do the student ID, I can't find that student. It's because this student was created only through the demographics information. There's no other activity going on. But watch if I do an in-program years or class enrollments or tests or anything of that sort that requires program year, watch what happens here. So I'll do 2021, 22. I'll do, and this is a site enrollment also, as I mentioned earlier. And now there's some activity for this student and watch what happens. I'll click refresh and there is that student right there. Again, it goes back to that filter. We have it defaulted to current program year and it won't show up unless they have any activity, unless you take out this filter and then you'll have all your students appear, okay? I believe that's it for my section. I'll go ahead and launch the poll. Okay. All right, so go ahead and do that. All right, so this poll just asked, help, I added my students onto TE with their student ID, name, and gender, but they're not showing up. What is happening? Go ahead and answer. Can you guys answer? Are you guys able to do it? Okay, looks like it's working there. All right, it looks like it's unanimous. You guys are good. You guys pay attention. Looks like you guys had some coffee, great coffee this morning, huh? All right. All right, it looks like it's unanimous. I'm gonna go ahead and end this now and share the results here. So the system is broken, highly unlikely. It does happen though, but as far as records, if you can access TE, the system is not broken at that moment. The system takes 4 hours to process records. It doesn't, as you saw earlier, I just created a student and it just processed it right away. And that's the whole idea of TE. It happens instantaneously. Current filter only shows students with activity. I need to remove the filter. Yes, as I went over that twice. It's really important to keep in mind of the filter because it blocks out students. And that's what's causing it. That's the culprit. The user has to import the records for its process. You can process it and then it just goes in there instantaneously. All right, so that's my section. Thank you, everyone. And I'll have it transition to Luke. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. TOPSpro. Let me see if I can get my chat over here so I can see if you guys have any questions, hopefully. All right, so how do you guys normally get your information into Enterprise? There's a few different ways. There's 4 ways. How do you track the demographics? How do you manually import them? Do you type them in one by one? Exporting from ASAP, okay. So third-party import, that's one way. Manually, merge from ASAP. What's another way to get information into TOPSpro? That's 2 out of 4. Manually. Manually. So another option is you can scan them, right? So if you have, the paper ones, paper test records, entry records, update records, you can scan and get them in. And then there's one more way information can get into Enterprise. Does anybody know what that 4th way is? CSV, so another import, yep. E-test. When they take their e-test, right? If they're a brand new, yep, Roxana, perfect. When they're a brand new student and they type in that UID, they can then fill in that basic information, right? Depending on what you guys decide, you get that demographics in there and they can kind of choose, name, date of birth, address, phone number, all that information can kind of go that way and does all the work for you guys. So those are the ways to kind of get information in. So we're going to go ahead and start creating some sites and some records and kind of show you how to create them manually. So if you go to organization agencies, you're going to notice the Rolling Hills, but then when you double click on it, you're going to notice you have all the agency's information, right? You have their agency ID, how many WTUs are available, their funding sources, all this good information, contact information, all this. And as you scroll down, ID auto generation, you can kind of set up things specifically for your agency. The contact information, if you have logos and stuff, if you have the CAPE information, the CASAS, all of this is going to be under just the edit view in your agency. And then you're going to notice you have that navigator on the left-hand side. You see your sites. And so we have the one site. We have, program years for funding, users, access groups. You have all these different kind of options under navigator. So if we wanted to make a new site, we can make it from, right here. You can click on, under the navigator for the agency, and then hit new and kind of create that site. You can also go to organization and go to sites as well. And that's going to kind of just pull up the sites. We lost that navigate, right? Because now we're just looking at the sites. And so if we need to create a new one, you can click new. And since we've kind of have a 0, let's go ahead and do a 02. And how was it? I think it was like RHAS East. We'll go East. Mix it up. And then you'll notice you have options underneath the site. If you want it to be an e-test site, you'll notice you can check it or uncheck it, right? You have those options. You also have, if you want to kind of decide, maybe a coordinator, or maybe it's a specific teacher or someone kind of, I want somebody over there, you can fill that in as well. You don't have to, it's not required. Some people have sites as like different campuses entirely, and maybe they'll have like the coordinator, who's ever kind of running that, they can set it up that way, but that's perfectly fine. And so if you click save, now we've kind of created it. And so now you'll notice you have everything under the site, just like, because we've now created it, just like we did before. So if we close out of this, the definitions, the instances, but if we close out, now we'll see 1 and 2. Yeah. And thank you. And then when we come back over here, and you'll notice, well, it's not there. It's just, we just got to refresh, and then we'll see the 2 there. And so after you kind of create your site, maybe we need to create users. So the same thing. When you click on the users, we see all the users that are set up. But again, we can always go to organization and users, and it's going to get us right back just like the sites. So it kind of both ways work. However you like to do it, will work. So then we'll just, when you click new, now we're going to create a new user. And so if we edit, so yeah, so you can edit, and it'll change that information, right? Because it's still technically there. It still has, it's still the 01, it's still that information. What you're doing is you're kind of editing, right? So like if you were changing the class name or something like that, it's same at the site. So we can kind of go back in here and say, you know what, ooh, it needs to be south. East isn't up yet. And we can kind of just update that, and that kind of updates it from that point. And so you're fine there. So yeah, if you guys need to go in, or you were kind of creating them and like mistype something, or need to update information, you can go in and update that yourself. There's no worries. And so when we go back to new users, we have an option. It says link with existing personnel. So normally data managers are going to be the ones that kind of create, they have, that data manager has the most rights. And so if you're a brand new agency, so yeah, if you guys are a new agency, go ahead and let us know. But yeah, you would be the one kind of creating everyone's account, right? So CASAS would kind of set you up, they'd create your account, give you a username, password. And then as the data manager, that's when you're going to start assigning access rights and user rights. So you might have a few like T basic admins access, or T enhanced, depending on which enterprise you're using, enhanced or basic. You could then kind of give T admin, you can give the coordinators, the proctors, and then some of those users can then make their own users as well. So maybe you have like a team, like a T admin access enhanced. Oh, they can now make, if they're coordinator proctor, maybe they need to make a new account if you have like a new proctor coming in, right? So it would all start with that data manager with those rights. And they can always give, equal or lesser rights. Now, if you're trying to give more rights, that's where you might have a problem. So if you have like a coordinator or proctor who has access for just that, they can't really go into the organization and the users and like create another T admin act. They don't have those rights to do those things. And so depending on their level of access in the access groups, that's what's going to allow them to kind of create those. And so the first question to kind of ask is link with existing personnel. And so if you have personnel, teachers, then you can link them to that teacher. So if you like either imported the teachers or if you created teachers and kind of linked them with classes, depending, what you can do is you can kind of link them together. And so it's one account, one personnel record together with those access rights. We're not going to do that right now, but you can. And then you also have the option to do what container you want it to be at. So when you do the drop down, you have the option, if you just want them to look at records for, 01, the north or the east, well, it hasn't updated, but essentially, yeah. We're going to say, go ahead and leave it on the agency level, right? We're going to need a user account. We'll say 10 because it's the greatest number, right? Come on, guys. Password, we'll just keep it simple. We'll just do my name. Doesn't matter. We're going to have to replace it. Now, this is the key thing. If you do need to disable, we recommend disabling, not really deleting old users. But you have the groups. So we have all of these options here. Like I was saying, here's the ET coordinator, here's the ET coordinator and proctor, here's just the proctor. Then you have, T admin access enhanced. I have a little more, basic things. You kind of see these groups that you guys would have the options for. And so we're going to go ahead and say, this is just a coordinator proctor. We don't want to give them any, T admin rights. They don't need to go in there. They're just going to be a proctor. They're just going to be able to kind of edit some of the sessions and help out like that way. And so if we click save, it's not going to do anything. We need to make sure we click add. So that's another important thing. Groups, no groups are selected. So make sure we click add. And now here it is, I'm making sure, obviously administrator 10, I'm going to confirm, yep, we have the certificates, we have them on file, they emailed them, I print them out, they're in my awesome file cabinet, everything's labeled, I'm not, all those good things. And then if they have contact IDs or things like that, you want a number, like for your teachers to paint on every organization, you can do that. You can then kind of fill in their name, where contact information if you want. It's kind of nice sometimes, you can kind of list it. You don't have to, but it's nice. And since we're doing the groups, if you wanted to have, T admin as well, you would do the same thing. You'd select it and make sure you click that. So I'm not going to do that, but you can have the ET proctor and then one, admin access group as well. Be careful when you don't just add like all the groups. Sometimes they'll kind of interfere with themselves. So when it says like the ET coordinator proctor, that's kind of at that system level, you'll notice. And then these other groups are kind of at the agency level. And so they don't interfere with each other. This gives the access for eTest, and this would give access into TE with all the data rights. And then if you scroll down, you're going to notice you have like individual, like the menu access rights. So the key with the groups, or if you did want a custom group, you can make your own custom group and then assign it that way. That way, instead of kind of going in and saying, I want them to have access to these menus, and I want them to run these reports, and one by one, you would kind of essentially set up these groups. So there's a teacher. So if we kind of scroll down, you'll see there's like the teacher access groups as well. And so if you have you can set up your teachers in a certain way, in the basic or the enhanced, link them up here. Remember you link it with the personnel account. I'll go ahead and add that. Well, when we create it, you would kind of select that up, set that up, link it properly, and then you can even limit it to just their classes, right? When you're kind of going through the personnel, the role access, you have these options, enable the batch, enable portal, enable the surveys, allow teacher access to enrolled students, restrict teacher access to own classes. What is the difference between ESL teachers school and ESL teachers? So that's going to be the site. So notice how when we scroll back up here, we have the option of the 4908 is the agency level, right? That's the higher level. And then you can restrict them to a site level access. So if I change this to 01, I'm now saying they're only going to be seeing things on site 1 or, site 2, right? Or, let's go ahead and put it back up at the agency level. And so you can restrict that. And so when they log in, they will not, like, as a data manager, you would use the 4908, but then if you assign them to the /01, that's when they would actually type in 4908/01 to log in when they're on that login screen. And so that's another key difference when you're kind of, and then that's only going into that specific site, or 02 for, the East Campus. And so Rolling Hills would be the 4908, but then as you go by each site, it'd be a specific site itself within that. We're limiting them to only that specific site. And so after you kind of set it all up, we prefer the groups. That way you don't have to go one by one. There's the record types, if they can list them, view them, create them, update them, delete them. And so you can kind of set all that up. But again, using the groups is much more easier, cleaner, don't have to think, and you know exactly what you're kind of getting there. Yep, and let's go ahead and save that. Email address, that's right. You do need an email address to reset the password. So that's another key thing that is kind of nice. Which you can, so when you have the email set up, say you have somebody who's e-testing only, right? They don't have any access to TE, but they say, oh, I forgot my password. They can always go into, another TE. So let me go ahead and do that now. I think I'm gonna have to reshare if I'm not mistaken. Let's just do screen 2. And so now we're gonna do what, 10. And if I connect, so again, right at the bottom, you'll see forgot your password. So they can kind of download it, sign in, click forgot your password, update their password if they forgot it. Log in, update if they need to. This just takes a little bit. So now, because we're just am I still, well, I can log in. Unfortunately,
you need contact support.
I need contact everything was underneath everything else. Sorry about that. Let me try that one more time. You'll get this that I can't see unless I stop sharing.
There we go.
And then let's show you this. I will accept. Yeah, things get hidden sometimes when I have too many things, and I apologize. So again, we're going to change our password, and we'll change our password. So then they'll be able to update it. It doesn't have to be the same. So you'll have these requirements. These are suggestions. You'll notice that I am not meeting them, but yet it still lets me change it. And at this point, you note it, so I won't have, depending on how your setups, you get that type of access, right? So we'll go ahead and exit now. But yeah, they can kind of go in and do that. And I'll go ahead and go back to the proper share so you can see my screen better, I think. But yeah, so it's kind of nice if you set it up properly. Let me open the chat up again. That way, if they do forget it, you can always say, hey, open up TE, click forgot password. They can reset their own passwords, or you guys can always go in and manually, update their passwords by going into the organization users, click and edit, and you can change the passwords right here for them. But it's nice to give them that ability if you're not available or somebody's not available. They kind of have that independence. And so after we kind of have our user accounts, let's go ahead and add definitions in class instances. So same thing, we have class definitions over here. And we're going to do the same thing. If you also click on organization, we'll go to classes and we have definitions again. And so when we come here, we can go to new, just like we did with everything else. And let's go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Tyler. And so we'll go ahead and do, there's a South Campus, like I was saying, that we changed it from East to South. Just some, you kind of refresh them and they'll pop up. And the class ID, oh, I don't know, let's do 10. Class description, we'll go with ESL level 1. And then you have the CIP code, the A22 course code. So if you have like some CET classes, things like that, and you know their codes, go ahead and then fill them in. Extended ID, if you want to have the same class ID with an extended ID or a course code. So we're creating the classes right now. This is the class definition information. So we went to organization, classes, and definitions. The definitions last essentially forever, right? This is kind of like your base. This is where you start from. You start with the definition. You're saying what is, what site it is, what's the class ID, what's the information, how can I find it? That's what's being created here. And so when we save it, we're now going to have options like the class instances, the enrollments, the class records, the teachers. So the teachers get attached at the class definition level, like somebody was saying earlier, right? And then you could link that to the user account. But if you'll notice, we don't have any class instances. And so sometimes people will create class definitions and think they have the class created. But then when they go into the class definitions and go to 10 and contains, and they say, I cannot find my class. I know it's here. It's equal with, I know for a fact I made that class and you can't find it. Oh, you remember, Tyler said filters. So if we click current program, do you think we're going to see it? We still have another filter. Let's find out. So even if you clear it, you still don't see it, but there's another filter. What if we click remove that filter? Then what happens? Now we're going to see this class. And the reason being, we don't have that class instance. So that class instance is what creates the program year. So when we click new on class instances, this is now going to say, okay, yep, site is 02. The class definition is 10. The program year is 21-22, 7-1, perfect dates, the whole program year. What is this? This is, we'll say, an ESL class. The focus area, if you are California, you might know some of these other options. But again, you can kind of select all those different special programs, all the transitional focuses. You can set up instructional settings, what type of class, the physical settings, the start times, if there's computers selectable in the portal, if you have the portal set up, how estimated the hours for distance learning, for regular hours, what days, details class schedule. So this is where you can kind of set up the specifics for each class instance. And so it's only good for 1 year. So after this year, we would create another class instance for 22-23. So right now we're going to go ahead and save it for the 21-22. Class ID, where did you get that from? So we created that. I just said I want it to be 10. So if you guys have third-party systems, you might have it set up. Maybe you're using like your state's course codes or things like that. That's something an agency can kind of decide how they want to number their classes as far as their class ID and the class description, how they want to name them, how they want to number them. Some people just do, smaller agencies might just do 1, 2, 3. Some people use, full codes from their system that gets generated. Some of them add in like the course or provider use what kind of numbers match up with their state or whatever kind of programs they're having. So that's something you guys can kind of decide on your own. And so that's how you would kind of create the class. First, you got to do the definition, then you do the instance. And then we'll go ahead and, so I think Ty already showed you guys how to kind of create a student record, if I'm not, just to kind of show you that. So we'll go ahead and just use the 1, 2, 3. So when we come into here, we'll notice, Ty's here, perfect. And say you wanted to add the student to a specific, how do you move the class to the next school year? So you're just gonna You can do proxies. It's a little more advanced if you were like, if the class was kind of continuing. But if you're just talking about, you know, this year showing up in the previous year and next year, that's going to be another class instance, right? So you can also import them, third-party imports another way. You can manually make them. So right, when we kind of did the new, we kind of select what program you're right. And so there's all these different ways, you know, like Tyler was saying, doing batch inserts into a specific thing for the students. You have all these different ways. But yeah, for next fiscal year, you know, on another 7-1 after 630 ends, you would kind of just make sure you have another class instance, either through importing, manual creation, proxying stuff over. There's a lot of different ways. But that's what you just want to make sure you have a class instance for that, because you want to be able to attach future programs within this or past, you know, records into this one. It's just going to contain that specific year. It's kind of showing you a time capsule of what happened from 7-1 to 630. So if we go into ties, you know, maybe they need the class enrollment. And so we can kind of do a new class enrollment. And so you have all these different options of, you know, this year, what's the class instance? So there's my 10, let's say entered 7-1. And so we can create, yeah, the class definition stays permanent. You're recreating the class instance. And so now we have Ty over in South Campus. So when we go to the class definitions, it's always going to be there. We go to the class instances. We go to the class enrollment. So everything it can kind of get a little confusing, but boom, we've just created a simple class enrollment. And so we'll kind of close out some of these. There's his enrollment. Class records, that's going to be like your hours, the types of those. Maybe they took a paper test, or if they e-test, you know, come down to the test. You can even create a new test, right? You can either do it from within here, or you can go to the records, and tests, records and tests. And from the test screen, you know, we can see all of our tests, right? We have all of our amazing tests here. And so let's say we need a new test. You know, maybe we have the scanner broke or it's not working and we need to grade these or something like that. We can kind of go in here and say, you know, 21, 22, Ty, class instance was, yeah, we'll keep it, you know, best number alive. And they tested, you know, a few weeks ago. What site was it? You know, it was at that South Campus, right? Yeah, they just switched. It used to be East, but now it's South. I don't know why. You know, you have all this. If it was a remote test, you know, did not save properly. Then you have the forms. It was a 185, right, guys? Yeah. And so you kind of have these options, and then you can kind of type in all the different answers. You can also do score overrides and say, you know what, they got 25. And we can kind of save this. And now that it's saved, when we go back to tests, we can either find, what was it, 1, 2, 3. And there we go. There's the 185, 229. Draw score was the 25. And so here's all these different ways, right? And going back, and you can do the same thing. You know, demographic history. You might need to occasionally create one new year if you're missing it for some of the reports. Program enrollments, same thing. You know, we can always do the new one. This year, ESL, you know, 7/1/2021. Remember, we're not going to mark the program status because the POPS takes care of that. We don't want to, goes off the attendance. We don't need to do that. And so now we kind of have this program enrollment. And so you can either create them from the student side when you go to, you know, records, students, demographics is the highest, you know, student record where you can kind of see everything. How will they know which questions were missed? Ah, Anna, perfect. That's right. They don't. And so when you just type in the answers like that, if you only have a raw score and you don't have the answers, it's not going to be able to know which ones they got right and wrong for like competency reports or other things like that. And so that's why it's kind of nice to, when you do create a new test, like you noticed, we'll just do another one, 21, 22, 10. Now they tested now. We had that option, remember, when we were coming through here, 186. Now you have the option to kind of go and just fill it in real quick and save it that way as well. And then when you type it in properly, now we got a proper raw score of only 8, a 206, but now we have the answers. And so now those reports are going to work. And so ideally, if you have them, type them in. There's occasions where maybe you only have the scale score, maybe you only have the raw score, maybe rarely happens, but or if you guys don't need that information, you just need the score, that's something you guys can kind of just do that way. And so now let's talk about exporting. So some of the things you can do is, and so say we needed to look at a certain test we were looking at, or maybe somebody was saying, we needed demographic information in an Excel format. We're going to send it out massive emails, things like that. You can kind of set up your columns just like they were showing you, right? Let's say we need their cell phone numbers because we're going to do that. And let's get the emails and, whatever information you needed. Say you just wanted this in Excel. And let's say we only wanted to send it to John's, the John Paul's. So when you click on export, we can export it. And when you just do this, it just makes a nice little Excel. You also have a few other options, but Excel is the nice one. Or I don't want to say the nice one, but that's the default one, I should say. You can do Word, you can do Rich, you can do all those, and you can just save it. And say you wanted to print this though. Now you can print it in a print preview to show you what it's going to look like. It looks more of like a report kind of. So sometimes you can kind of do like class lists of their, and kind of they want it to look like this, right? I don't like Excel. I want a paper one where it looks like this. But then they say, well, don't print it though. I just want to look at it. I don't need the physical copy. You can still export in the top left again. And so now we're going to get the report looking like the printout it would, like on the physical sheet, but now it'll be in a PDF. And so that's another nice way to kind of, you can either print it, itself, or you can just click export, save it as a PDF, and life is all good and wonderful again. And then that's when you can kind of, fix this and make these wider and change the orientation and make it exactly how you want, right? Like let's do landscape. What's that look like? By changing to landscape, all of a sudden everything kind of fits, right? And then again, there's the export. So with that, we're going to go ahead and, does anybody have any questions before we stop the recording? And then I'll explain what happened. Okay, let's go ahead and stop the recording.